and he will sweep you off your feet, metaphorically. You and me, we are one. It was a mess, but I loved it. Hello my lovelies, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing so well. Today's video is one that has been very highly requested, and that is my God tier books. And if you don't know what that means, it's basically books that I think are the best of the best. They're my favourite books of all time, ones I will never stop recommending, the most beautifully written books I think everyone needs to read basically. Now if you're new here, I am a mood reader and I read pretty much every single genre. So in my big pile of books that I've got over here, there is literally every single genre here. So if you're sat there thinking, oh I don't really read romance, I read more thriller, or I read more fantasy than thriller, I've got everything, don't you worry. Now something about myself which I've realised is I can read a book, rate it probably like a 5-star, and then a couple months later change my mind, or rate a book a 4-star, and then a couple months later make it a 5-star. So my taste is always changing, so I'll probably have to make a part 2 of this video in like 6 months time, because I bet there'll be a whole new selection here. But right now in November 2025, these are my God tier books. First up is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio, and I actually finished this only last week, but as soon as I finished it I was like, yeah, this is going on my God tier list. However, I will say this book absolutely destroyed me. I literally hated reading it actually. It was so painful, so twisted. I was struggling the whole way through emotionally, physically. I was a mess, but I loved it. I've seen quite a few people describe this book as a modern classic, and I think that is such a good way to describe it. It's basically about a group of 7 friends, and they are going to like this big Shakespearean performing arts school in America, and they're always kind of like given the same roles, like hero, sidekick, villain, like damsel in distress, like always the same. However, their like teachers decide to switch it up one day, but then everything kind of gets muddled up, things start becoming reality, and then one of the friends is found dead, and they basically have to convince themselves and the police that they are blameless. Another thing about this book which I found really interesting while reading it is it's kind of written in like a play style. So instead of chapters, there's like scene 1, scene 2. It's just written so interestingly, and it's written by the perspective of one of the friends called Oliver. I don't want to give much else away because I just think it's one that you really need to jump in yourself and read, because I had no idea anything about this book before I read it. I didn't even read the back. All I knew is my best friend loved it. I had it on my shelf and I was like, right, this is going to be dark academia, perfection for this time of year, I'm going in. And it really was, but I am traumatized. This is the kind of book where like there's like a twist in it that will wreck you. It will wreck you to oblivion, but in the best way and in the worst way, and it's just an emotional roller coaster of so many different things, and you need to read it. I think throughout this book I felt every emotion that you could ever feel. I was sad, I was almost on the verge of tears, I was shocked, I was gasping. I had to close the book at one moment because I was like, what the hell did I just read? But it's so worth it. And please read this book if you haven't already been convinced. Next is 7 Summers by Page 2, and this is another one. I closed this book and I just burst into tears, but this was less traumatizing than the other one. But this was a little bit different to If We Were Villains. This book was just more emotional, real, raw. It was so profound. Like I just absolutely adored it, and I couldn't believe I'd never read it before. So this book is kind of in 2 different timelines. It goes through 6 summers ago all the way to present day. It basically follows a girl called Liv, and she is living in Cornwall, England, and she meets this guy called Finn, and they basically fall in love, have a passionate night together, but it actually ends in tragedy. So they kind of get like a little bit of a trauma bond, but they still are like obsessed with each other. But he has to move back home to LA, but he promises to come back every single summer, and if they're both single they can, you know, have a bit of fun together. And then the timeline will cut over to present day summer, where Liv meets a guy called Tom, and they basically kind of fall in love, and she thinks maybe I can live a life where a summer doesn't mean a heartbreak every year. And then she in present day is forced to make an impossible choice, and then she finds out the reason that Tom has actually moved to Cornwall, and it kind of like shakes her world about. And then you're going back to like all the 6 summers of like what happened between Liv and Finn, and it's just so emotionally charged. The best way I can put this book into simple wording is this book is as heartbreaking as it is heartwarming. Page 2 will make you fall in love and then break your heart at the exact same time. It is so emotionally wrecking, but I think the story itself is absolutely gorgeously written. It's so real. I think it really portrays that life isn't sunshine and fairies. I mean, my girl Liv in this book is really going through it, and you just feel her emotions so raw, and it's so horrible, but at the same time you're rooting for her. You're kind of wishing that she makes the right decisions, and oh, it's just, I can't even. I would say this is more like a summary book, but trust me, read it any time of year. It will get you in its grasp and you will fall in love with it. Next up is The Night She Disappeared by Lisa Jewell, and this is one of my god tier books because I feel like it's the book that stepped me into the mystery thriller world. But I am a Lisa Jewell lover through and through. I probably read over 10 of her books now. I love every single one of them. To like be real and honest with you guys, like there is better Lisa Jewell books. Like I feel like this is good, but it's not as good as, let's say, like Then She Was Gone or No, This Is True. Her more recent one is just incredible. But I think definitely if you're looking for an introduction to Lisa Jewell, this is the book to start with. Oh my gosh, her writing is just so incredible. The twists, the turns, like all the characters, how in depth she goes into each one and like their backstories, it's just insane. So this particular book is about a teenage girl called Tallulah. She ends up going on a date with her partner and leaving her baby at home with her mum. However, her mum waits and waits and her daughter never returns. Then cut to a year later, there is a woman who has just moved to town because her husband just got a job at the school as the head teacher, and she's walking through the woods on the grounds of the school and she finds a sign that says dig here. The plotting of this book was incredible. It had me hooked the whole way through. The characters that you got introduced to, the mum, Tallulah, the boyfriend, all the friends, you're just thinking, I feel like none of you are innocent here. Like, which one of you is it? What has happened to Tallulah? Like the whole way through. Like, it's not one of those books where you can guess exactly what's happened in the middle, because the plot twist in it, I could never have guessed that, and I feel like I'm quite good at guessing plot twists in mystery books. But yeah, it's just an absolute page turner that is so close to my heart, and I will never stop recommending it to anyone who wants to get into mystery thriller. Now, moving on to a book you all will know and probably love, it is Shatter Me. And when I'm talking about this book, I'm talking about the whole series, by the way, but I just want to focus on this specific book because it's the first one. I think this book is so underrated and overrated at the same time. I feel like so many people are scared to pick it up because of how many people talk about this series, criticize it, and there's so much information about it out there. But just to ground it all for a second and take it from me, I think this series is one of the most amazing dystopian love triangle romance, like empowering story that has ever been written. If you didn't know already, it's basically set in like a dystopian era. Everything to do with previous humanity is being burned, written over by something called the Re-establishment. And there's this girl called Juliet, and she actually has powers where if she touches anyone, they will die. And the Re-establishment have basically captured her in this book and they want to use her as a weapon, but she is like absolutely not. And she's not really mentally stable enough in this book to even think about that. She like thinks so low of herself, she has no self-worth, and I just think the journey of that within these books just alone is incredible, and it's so empowering, and I love it. As the books go on, she meets obviously different friends, she escapes this place and she learns to like obviously control her power, and then she gets into like a little love triangle with like someone she meets in this book and then someone who is quite high up in the Re-establishment in the other books, which is obviously quite intense. I don't want to speak too much on it because I don't want to ruin it, and I feel like it's one that you need to jump in for yourself and like kind of build up to it all. In my opinion, they are such easy reads, so I will have no doubts that if you guys want to read this book series, you will literally shoot through it like I did. But yeah, I just absolutely love this series, so I had to add it to my god tier list. And I feel like when you get to the point where you meet Mr. Warner, you'll be giggling, kicking your feet, screaming, because I was. That guy is ultimate book boyfriend. Next up is The 7-Year Slip, and this, as we all know, I talk about it all the time. As I said, all these god tier books I've probably spoken about so much in my videos, but this is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, and this is the most magical, beautiful, romantic romance that has ever been written. Something about Ashley's books is every single one of them is about magical realism, so it is set in like modern day and it's like quite tame, but there's always some sort of like magical like dribs and drabs in it. Like in this one, it's about a girl and she's going for a breakup and she just wants to swear off men, like dive into her work, but then her aunt dies and she ends up moving into this apartment, but she finds a guy stood in there with a lemon meringue pie recipe and she's like, whoa, who are you? And she basically finds out he's from 7 years in the past because of this magical apartment, and this obviously flips her world upside down. She kind of falls in love with him, but she's like, you're from 7 years in the past. They can only really speak when they're both in the apartment, and it's just incredible. I feel like it'll have you on the edge of your seat, you'll have your heart pitter-pattering. It is just amazing and I loved it so much, and it's my top romance book ever, and I will never ever stop recommending it to anyone. Next is The Queen's Rising duology, and this is by author Rebecca Ross, as you guys will probably know her as the author of the Divine Rivals series, and this is one of the first fantasy books I ever read back in 2018. It's probably one of the first books I ever read after like childhood in like early 2018 when I was about 15 or 16, and they are just the most amazing fantasy books. I feel like if you are really into fantasy and you want fantasy, not like a romantasy, these books are ones to pick up. If you've read Divine Rivals, you will know Rebecca writes her books so poetically, so beautifully, and there's so much lore into it and so much research into like medieval things, and that is exactly what is in these books. It's kind of hard to explain this duology because of all the lore and the intricacies about it, but I've written like a little summary for you guys that I'm going to read to make it make sense. These books basically follow a girl called Brianna, and she is a student at Magnalia House, training in one of the 5 passions. And the passions are art, music, dramatics, wit and knowledge. When she is left without a patron, a disgraced lord offers to be hers. However, she is then thrown into a dangerous plot to overthrow the king and restore the rightful queen to the throne. It's just absolutely brilliant, and I highly recommend it. I hardly see anyone talking about these books, and I think if you're a fantasy lover, you're really missing out. Next up is The Way I Used to Be duology by Amber Smith, and these books, they kicked me to the ground. They punched me in the gut. They emotionally wrecked me. They are so sad, but they are so worth the read. I think definitely 100% you have to read the trigger warnings, because the story it follows is quite a difficult one. It is about a girl who is SA'd by her best friend's brother, and kind of like her journey on how that affected her through her teen years, and like getting help for that and how that works out, and it's just really emotionally real and raw. I'll always say that Eden, who is the main character in these books, holds such a special place in my heart. Like, that is my girl. I love her so much. She's my favourite book character till the end. And then I feel like in the second book, which is The Way I Am Now, it's not light-hearted in the sense of light-heartedness, it's just a little bit less heavy on the shoulders. I feel like it's kind of like when she's coming out the other side of everything that happened, but it still shows that not everything, not all the emotions are going to go away. Like, this is something that affects you for life, and she's kind of just like trying to build herself back up again, and it's also just so emotional. I just think I'll always recommend these books because they're so important, and I think if you haven't read them, please read them. Next is Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams, and this is another romance book which I absolutely adore as well, probably on the same level as The 7 Year Slip. However, I love this book for so many different reasons. This is about a florist called Annie, and she's determined to find someone who complements her life, and after going on quite a bad date where she overhears the guy saying she's unbelievably boring, she kind of wants to make a change to herself to be more fun and flirty like her sisters, like her friends. But of course, she's not that person, so she needs someone to help her. That's where Mr. Sexy Tattooed Will Griffin walks in, and he is a bodyguard. This is also the second book within kind of like a series, by the way, but you can read it as standalones. I've never read the first book, but Will is kind of like the bodyguard to this girl in the first book who is a pop star, I believe. But yeah, so he's a bodyguard, and he agrees to teach Annie to be more confident and kind of like a fake dating kind of thing. However, he had one rule when coming back into town, and that was to stay away from Annie Walker, because there's some feelings going on there that he can't afford to have distract him. But obviously that becomes a little bit difficult when she's enlisting him to help her, and then they start fake dating and lines seem to blur, and it's just incredible. Now, I'm a sucker for a small town bodyguard, kind of like opposites attract, friends to lovers, fake dating thing, and that is exactly what this book is. But the reason I love this book so much is because I found the main character Annie so relatable, and I just loved her story and like how in depth her character was written. Like, it's not one of those romances where it's just all about the romance, the smut and all this. Like, the characters are written so real, so raw and so in depth. And what I loved about Annie is she really struggled with who she is as a person. She was looking at everyone around her confident sisters, her pop star best friend, and she's just thinking, why am I not this way? Like, am I boring? This guy's called me boring. Like, why am I like this? Like, why can't I be more like Audrey Hepburn in the movies? And I just think that is so true. Like, I feel like everyone feels like that at some point in their life. Maybe in early teenage years or young adult life, you just sit there and you think, why can't I be like this person? Maybe this guy will like me more if I change myself. And then it's kind of like her journey of self-discovery, of like, you know, you don't have to change yourself. Like, you are perfect the way you are, and you will find someone who will love you for you. Like, you are not boring. Like, screw what anyone else says. And I just absolutely love that. And it's just so relatable, because also Annie's quite shy and timid, and like people think that she's kind of babyish because she doesn't ever like swear, or like she never talks about like sex and things. And that character is trying to come up her shell and be like, no guys, actually I'm not this babyish little girl that you see me as. I'm actually a grown woman now, and I don't get cringed out by you guys talking about like your sexcapades and like swearing in front of me and stuff. And I just think, Annie girl, you and me, we are one. I relate to you on a deep level, and I think that is the best kind of books. But I think even if you don't relate to Annie's character, you will still love this book because it's just beautifully written and it's so sweet and charming. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Wicked King by Holly Black, and this is actually the second book in the Cruel Prince series, or the Folk of the Air series, whatever you want to call it. And the reason I've singled this one out is because it was just the best one. I feel like if you haven't read the series, I feel like The Cruel Prince is quite like a world building kind of story. Not a lot goes on. It's introducing you to the characters, the world, the Prince Carden and Jude and their stories and everything, and then into this book it's more of the fairy politics and everything's going on and it's just explosive, and then there's more of Jude and Carden and it's just amazing. So I apologise in advance if you haven't read this series yet, because I am going to be focusing on this specific book, but trust me, read the series either way and I think you'll love this book too. But yeah, I just specifically love this book because Jude is a character where she never annoys me, and I think that's like kind of hard in a fantasy book. I feel like lots of fantasy books, the main character can kind of be insufferable. They kind of are a little bit always a damsel in distress, even if their author is trying to make them strong and independent. It kind of always falters when like a man enters the room. But like I feel like Jude throughout this series, especially this book, stays strong, independent. She is such a badass and I love her. I feel like the plot twists, the twists and the turns in this book also kept me gripped so much. And obviously we get to see Carden and Jude's like really toxic, strange relationship like a bit more in this book. Again, if you've never read this series, do not go into this thinking it's a romantasy series. It is not. There is more fantasy, fairy politics, more plot focus than romantasy at all. Like, it's dribs and drabs, but it's really good dribs and drabs. But yeah, this enticing, sinister world is one that I absolutely adore, and this book will always be a favourite of mine. Next is the Inheritance Games series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and I talk about this series so often. So you have the Inheritance Games, you have the Hawthorne Legacy, and then there is the Final Gambit. I think this is one of the best young adult mystery series I've ever read. It has everything you could ever want in it. A mystery, puzzles, mind-boggling twists, a little love triangle romance. It is just wow. I also will always kind of compare it to the Knives Out movies. If you love those movies, these books kind of give the same vibes with like the puzzles and the twists and stuff. I think Jennifer Lynn Barnes is so clever. She uses so many like different mind tricks in these books and you're just thinking, I could never have come up with that and I never would have guessed that. It's basically about a girl called Avery and she inherits a billionaire's fortune. However, she's never even met this billionaire, but she goes to his house and of course his whole family is there, like absolutely furious on why this girl has gotten all this inheritance, but she doesn't actually get the inheritance. She has to play all these games that this guy, this billionaire guy, has left for her and the family because that's what he was into, and like it kind of goes deeper into like her life and why she was chosen, and it's just insane. And then as well as all that, you have the billionaire's grandsons, and two of them kind of like fall in love with her, and it's like this whole triangle, and they have their own secrets of like an ex-girlfriend who died, and it's just insane. It's hard to explain, but you definitely have to read them for yourself. But yeah, these were straight on my god tier list because I could not put them down. I literally devoured these within 3 days. Like I read like 1, 2, 3 in 3 days because of how amazing they were, and I just had to know what was going to happen because each book ends with like a shocking like twist or something, and I'm just like, what? Watch's Voice by Mia Sheridan is the next book, and I talk about this book on Book Talk all the time. I love this romance book with my whole heart. It was probably my favourite book I read in like 2023 because it was so beautiful. It was just absolutely stunning. It follows a girl called Bree and she moves to the small town of Pelion to escape a trauma she had in the past. That's where she meets silent man Archer Hale, and none of the town really talk to him and they kind of think he's a bit weird and he's got his own trauma going on, but Bree is the first person to go up to him and like bond with him, and they kind of fall in love, and it's just gorgeous. And there's like so many twists in it which had me on the edge of my seat. Like one of the twists, I started sobbing. Like it ripped my heart out and it was horrible. Like, Mia Sheridan, you are cruel for that one. But I think the best way to describe it is this book is just a gorgeous tale of survival and the power that love has when it comes to healing, and also that you can't really love anyone else until you love yourself, and like you really need to come to grips with that and like kind of separate yourself, even as sad as it is. It's just really layered and gorgeous and a page turner, and every single person needs to read this book because I think it really says a lot about ourselves as humans and the way we feel, as well as it just being a cute little love story. I love how you can just see the tower of books which is piling up next to me. We are almost done. This next book is The Dagger and the Flame by Catherine Doyle, and this is a fairly new one. I think it came out last year, I believe. I know the new one came out this year, which I'm in the middle of and absolutely loving. This romantasy book is absolutely amazing. I think if you're a romantasy lover and you haven't heard of this, because I think it's quite an underrated one, definitely add it to your TBR. It's set in this city called Fantôme, and in this city there is two rival guilds. There's Daggers and the Cloaks. So the Daggers are kind of like this underground guild, and they are assassins, and they use this like vial of stuff called shade, and it's kind of like a heinous thing where like they drink it and they can disappear into shadows and of course like kill people, and like, but the shade does affect them like negatively. And then the cloaks are thieves, and they're a bit more like less evil, I guess, the less evil of them, and they're kind of, they just hate each other basically. And this book follows a girl called Seraphine, and her mum is murdered, and so she has no choice but to join the Cloaks. But she has a dagger who ends up being the heir of the Daggers, chasing her down to kill her. However, Ransom, this dagger who is out to kill her, is shocked when he finds out that Seraphine actually holds a magic he has never seen before. And of course, this just turns into a fiery enemies to lovers. I think this is one of the best enemies to lovers I have ever read in my entire life. I think the best way to describe it is enemies to lovers to enemies. I think Catherine does an amazing job at keeping the tension all the way through, even when they're kind of borderline on like the lover side. There's still tensions, there's still like unanswered questions of how this is going to work, and all the like juicy plot that is happening like amongst their relationship and how that affects them and how it's like making the world explode. I feel like it's really hard to find a romantasy book, especially an enemies to lovers romantasy book, which is very popular, which is so original, not same old, not boring, very slow burn, and it sticks to the slow burn all the way up until the end, and then it's ripped away from you. I just think if you're a fantasy lover, you have to pick this one up. Out of all the ones that I've so far spoken about, please make it this one. I think you'll be thanking me later, especially when you are introduced to your new boyfriend, Ransom. He is everything. Like, this man is book boyfriend to otherworldly levels, and he will sweep you off your feet metaphorically. You'll be sweating with the amount of angst and tension in this book. Okay, we are on the second to the last book I'm going to talk about today, and it is of course Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. And this is another romantasy book where I feel like the main character does not annoy me. Like, she can be a little bit annoying in the rest of the books that have come out, but in this specific one, the first book, the OG Fourth Wing, I absolutely love Violet's character. She's a character where even though she's small, she's weak, and everyone's like making fun of her, she proves to everyone, you are wrong, like I am so much more than this. And she does it in such a badass way. I feel like everyone knows this already, but Fourth Wing is basically about a dragon riders college, and it follows Violet Sorrengail, and she gets forced out the scribe quadrant by her mother, who is kind of like in charge around here, and she gets forced to become a dragon rider, and she has to go through all these really intense, horrific trials to get in. And then she meets all these friends, she goes through so many tragedies, and there's like rebellion on the horizon, and she's kind of like a part of that. And she's got dragons, and she's got like the strongest dragon, and it just all is insane. I don't want to say too much because this is yet again another book you just need to jump into. Like, it can't be explained to you. You just need to go in knowing there's dragons, enemies to lovers, tension, an amazing plot, and you will love it. I remember reading this book for the first time and I was like, this plot is one of the best plots I've ever read. Like, it is so gripping. Everything about it is so well thought out. Everything about all the different quadrants and how things are ran, it's kind of ran like an army camp. I was like, this is so interesting. Then of course you have the fact that you bond with a dragon, and like Violet's talking to a dragon through her mind, and then Xaden's there and their dragons are bonded so he can talk to her through her mind. I think that is one of the best plot things I've ever heard in my entire life. Your enemies to lovers can speak to you through your mind. Sorry. But yeah, I feel like I'm saying so much but so little at all about this book. But to put it quite plainly, the best book I've ever read in my life. I loved it so much, and yeah, it will probably become one of your god tier books too. And the last god tier book on my list is The Crimson Moth by Kristen Cicerelli. Like a broken record always talking about this book, but it's one of the best enemies to lovers, as well as all the other ones I've just exactly said the same thing about. But this is about a witch called Rune and a witch hunter called Gideon, and it's set in like a Bridgerton-esque kind of era, which I absolutely loved. I love the gothic vibes, I love Bridgerton vibes. It's like Regency is the best way to put it. It's like Gothic Regency. Rune is someone high in society and she has to hide that she is a witch because she will get killed if they find out, because their old royalty was like a group of witches and they ended up being really evil and really hurting a lot of people. So they just hate witches in this place. But Rune knows that not all witches are evil and there is loads out there, and she saves them before basically the witch hunters can get to them, and she sets them free to like over the water where they accept witches. She basically is known as the Crimson Moth because of like this mark that she leaves after she saves the witches. And that's where Gideon Sharp enters, and he is the guy. He is like, I need to find this Crimson Moth. She's taken all my witches I need to kill and I hate her. But the twist lies where they end up capturing a witch that Rune needs to find, and it's her grandmother's best friend that her grandmother said, you need to find this person. And so Rune is like, my plans are kind of getting all messed up here because you've captured her, and she has no idea where this witch has been taken. So she's like, the only way I'm going to find out where this person has been taken is if I caught Gideon Sharp, the witch hunter. So it's basically the story of her courting him, and obviously he hates the Crimson Moth, but she's a Crimson Moth and only you and Rune know that she's a Crimson Moth, and it's so intense because Gideon Sharp, underneath all the swooniness of him, and I love him, he is brutal. I don't want to say too much more about it, but trust me, you'll absolutely love it. And it's another enemies to lovers to enemies with incredible plot twists. Some of the plot twists in this book I was literally gasping out loud because of how good it was. The connection you feel to the characters in the story is like no other. And yeah, that's basically how it became my god tier book. But yeah, that is the last one I'm going to talk about today. This has been a long video. I really hope you guys don't mind. If you do like this longer content, please let me know, because I feel like I tried to make one of my videos quite a lot shorter than this. I would absolutely love to know in the comments below what your god tier books are. If you have any the same as me or any different than me, let me know. And as always, if you liked, please give it a massive thumbs up and subscribe if you are new, and I will see you in my next video.